Signs of optimism. Could the pandemic be effectively over by May? A possible peace breakthrough in the Mideast and a deep dive into the great medical achievement of our lives. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Monday, November 23rd. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Hey, Jill. How was the weekend?
It was good. You look like you're telling ghost stories over there. What's going on?
I don't know. It's usually it's lighter out by now, but it's pitch black outside. I think it's supposed to be rainy today. Well, Jill, I had a very successful weekend, and you know why that is? Because I avoided the coronavirus. I avoided getting it, I think. So even though I didn't really do anything else other than watch TV, based on my new motto, I had a very good weekend.
Well, that's good. I mean, I think that as I've said before, I think you can congratulate yourself on not getting it 2 weeks ago.
Sure.
But it sounds like if you stayed in your apartment, it would have been pretty tough.
It would have been hard this weekend. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the busiest travel week of the year, and it could not come at a worse time in terms of where we are right now in this pandemic. So U.S. coronavirus cases are very close to 200,000 per day, just ahead of Thanksgiving. Hospitalizations are at record levels, the daily death toll at its highest level since May. But the cavalry is coming, as Dr. Fauci likes to say. The chief of Operation Warp Speed said over the weekend the government is planning for 20 million people to get vaccinated in December and then 30 million per month starting in January. So this would effectively create herd immunity by May. And if all goes to plan, it's a big if, given the logistics of the distribution.
Yeah, another vaccine just out this morning. The data, at least from AstraZeneca and Oxford University. This is one of those first vaccines that we heard about back in the spring. It's showing an average of 70% efficacy. That's very good. This is another one that doesn't have to be stored at super cold temperatures. So again, that's going to be very good in the distribution. So that data is just out. I haven't really gotten a look at it, but I just saw the headline cross. Oh, Jill, the one thing that I did do this weekend is my wife and I went to get tested yesterday, because that is my parents' rule. If you want to come home for Thanksgiving, you have to show a negative test at the door. It's like a club. They're like bouncers, basically. But I respect that. So we went to the hospital to do the drive-through testing. First of all, it was amazing. They have it down to a science. There was no wait whatsoever. They're such professionals. It's incredible. But it was the brain tickler. You know, the one where they just shove it up your nostril for like 15 seconds. Have you had that one?
I think yes. I mean, I've been tested once, and that's what it was. So yeah. I think it's the brain tickler, as you call it.
Yeah, well, I thought of you because I was literally crying. It was so uncomfortable. And the woman who administered the test was just making fun of me, and she said that she's never seen a woman cry, but she said that men always wince and cry and squirm. So I just thought that was sort of funny.
Oh, man. That's interesting. So you're getting tested and you're going home. So you are doing a big Thanksgiving.
Well, I'm not big. I mean, it's going to be my brother, my sister, my wife, and my parents. But yeah, assuming that these test results come back and they said 1 to 2 days, that's the plan.
All right. That's more than, is that 10 though? I mean, technically speaking, is that within guidelines?
Yeah, it'll be less than 10. So we should be all right, hopefully.
Okay, so on that AstraZeneca vaccine, so it's actually, they tested it 2 different ways, right? So they administered it in 2 different doses.
Yep.
One of them actually proved to be 90% effective. So if they move forward with that one, which I'm sure that they will, we now have 3 potential vaccines that are 90% effective, which is almost unheard of. And the reason this is so important as well, they're going to be actually asking for emergency use authorization overseas in places in Europe. So at least we're going to have different vaccines going to different places. It's just one more way that we're going to tackle this virus. The Regeneron antibody treatment, that actually got emergency use authorization as well over the weekend. That's what President Trump got. Chris Christie had the Eli Lilly one, so that's
Yeah.
already approved for emergency use authorization.
The problem with those
President
ones,
Trump
Jill.
got the Regeneron one. What,
Yeah, the
Carlo?
problem with those ones. I was just saying the problem with those antibody, the monoclonal antibody cocktails. There's just not enough of them. I mean, I think they're
Exactly.
hugely effective, but there's just not even close to enough.
Right. They said they're going to have about 80,000 doses available by the end of the year. We have 200,000 new cases a day. That's the thing. It's just the medical breakthroughs aren't able to keep up with just this breakneck pace at which people are contracting the virus. And on that note, despite pleas from public health officials, up to 50 million people expected to travel for Thanksgiving this week, according to AAA. It's down, but only slightly from about 55 million last year. It's by far the most people traveling since the pandemic began. Dr. Fauci and other officials were dispatched to TV over the weekend, basically begging people to be safe and not to travel. But a viral video showed packed crowds at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. More than 1 million people passed through airport checkpoints on Friday, according to TSA. So it's a lot less than the 2.5 million who traveled that very same day last year, but it's still the second highest number of travelers since March.
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing Thanksgiving if I had to fly. That's not to say, I mean, there's a lot of people who there's college students who they don't have an option, right? The dorms are closed, they have to go home. But I would not get on an airplane right now unless I absolutely had to. But Jill, 50 million, that is a shocking number. I mean, I would have guessed it would have been far, far fewer than the 55 million last year. So that is a little bit worrisome. Speaking of crowds, though, I don't know if you saw the picture in the New York Post today of the 7,000 person indoor wedding here in Brooklyn from I believe it was over the weekend. It was the Hasidic Jewish community, no masks anywhere to be seen, just straight up. It's psychopathic behavior. It really is. I mean, it's so disrespectful to the rest of us. That story just infuriated me this morning. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just we're still Jill.
And you know what? It's like we're so close to the end of this thing, right?
Yeah.
We're basically, if everybody could just do their part, we could probably be on the other side of this early next year. I have no words, Carlo. It's horrible. I thought you were going to say, did I see the picture? There's two pictures that have been haunting me. One is these jumbo-sized rats that are overtaking the city. That was on the cover of the New York Post. Maybe not the cover, but that was on the New York Post over the weekend. Enough to give me nightmares. Yeah, the size of bunny rabbits.
Well, they're hungry because they usually eat the garbage in the subway, and there's fewer people on the subway, so there's less garbage, so they're out there prowling. They got to eat,
All right, let's talk a little politics. President-elect Biden's transition team says that it's going to be announcing his first cabinet appointments tomorrow, moving forward with a key part of the process, even though the White House has not acknowledged the outcome of the election. Biden is reportedly set to pick longtime aide Tony Blinken as Secretary of State and Linda Thomas Greenfield, a longtime diplomat, as ambassador to the UN. Those picks would both signify a return to a more establishment foreign policy agenda. Meanwhile, several more congressional Republicans have broken with the president, calling for him to concede. Even Chris Christie, former governor of New Jersey, a Trump ally, said on Sunday TV that the president's legal team, is a, quote, national embarrassment.
Yeah. I mean, it is. But it was interesting to see him come out and say that. Yeah, Pat Toomey, the senator from Pennsylvania, he's out saying that we got to get going. Congresswoman Liz Cheney from Wyoming, she I believe is the number 3 House Republican. She came out and was like, this is the legal stuff is not going anywhere, so we have got to start this transition. One thing I was thinking about over the weekend about Biden presidency. This is I don't know. This isn't exactly a hot take, but I've just sort of been noodling it around in my mind, so I wanted to throw it out to the group here. Our last 2 presidents had this sort of cult of personality around them. And I think it's really going to be refreshing to get away from that, right? When you think about it, Presidents Obama and Trump, that not alike really in any way whatsoever, except for this. They both had these really outsized and polarizing personalities that I think for different reasons really ended up harming them in terms of actually getting stuff done, right? Which is, when it comes down to it, the actual job of being president, passing legislation, policy. And I'm not comparing these two as men or as presidents, but when you think about how they both came to office with this big chunk of the electorate sort of projecting all of their hopes and fears onto these two guys, Joe Biden has none of that, right? The expectations for this guy could not really be lower. And in my opinion, and that's not a knock on him. To me, that's a very good thing, and I think it could work in his favor in terms of being a good president, or maybe not even a good president, but at least not a bad one. So I was just sort of thinking about that as I was driving back from the test, getting tested yesterday. So take it with a grain of salt, but I figured I'd throw it out there for the team here.
I like that. I also am excited to have a boring president, if we
Yeah.
could call him that. I don't want to read. I don't want. I look forward to a time when politics is not this big discussion that's contentious. And look, politics is always one of those things. It's a cliche, but it's like you don't talk politics or religion over dinner. I get it, but I'm ready for a boring president. I'm ready for just kind of like, as he says, a return to normal.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of with you.
Yeah,
And
I think.
by
I
the
mean,
way,
look.
he's also a compromiser. He is a moderate. His picks so far are proving that he's not going too far left, which was a fear of a lot of people with him. He's really
Right.
sticking to who he is. We're going to know a lot more tomorrow, I think. But so far, his chief of staff pick and others have pretty much been the people who've been with him for years.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, these are the foreign policy picks. These are establishment people, right? These aren't, these aren't like fringe, like TV stars. These are people who have been in the foreign service for decades. Maybe you prefer the other way, but I for one am excited about that.
Overseas now, Israeli media is reporting this morning that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu traveled to Saudi Arabia yesterday to meet secretly with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So, if confirmed, this would be the first meeting between leaders of between Saudi Arabia and Israeli leaders, and it could signal normalizing relations between the two. This comes on heels of diplomatic relations being established between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain. But Carlo, this is huge. Netanyahu and bin Salman meeting in Saudi Arabia. I don't think that we can underestimate the importance of that if diplomatic relations were to be established between these two countries, what that could potentially mean.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be very interesting to see how this shakes out we're just talking about Biden, right? Under a Biden administration. Bibi is not close, obviously, with Joe Biden or with that sort of like wing of American politics. So I don't know enough to know what actually is going on here. But you're right. I mean, MBS, the Crown Prince, having the Israeli Prime Minister on Saudi soil. That, assuming that is confirmed, which I suspect it probably will be today, because I assume they'd want to put pictures out. You're right. This is potentially big. So sort of put what do they call it? What do they say? Put a bookmark in that. What's that term phrase? Put a pin in that.
I'm not really sure.
But
you're just trying to say, let's remember this.
Put a pin in
later?
this. I think this is gonna be a big story. Yes.
And the one thing I will say, is that I don't think that the media, whatever is the media, I in some ways, we don't necessarily give the Trump administration its kudos for a job well done. And in this case, they certainly, I don't know what their role was, but they certainly didn't get in the way. And we do know that they did play a bit of a role in terms of the other Arab countries that have established diplomatic relations with Israel. And in part, that I think that hurts mainstream media, because it becomes less credible. Like, if this happened under President Obama, I think this would be a humongous deal. It would be like peacemaker in the White House,
right.
Bringing about peace all over the Middle East. And yet there's not really a mention, I'm sure, there's a lot else going on, of course, with COVID and the election, in fairness to the media. But I
But
do
yeah,
think
no.
that ignoring some of the successes isn't a great look either.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. I think it's probably too early to know what exactly the long term effects of this are. But look, if President Trump goes down in history as the guy who began a legitimate Middle East peace process, I mean, yeah, that's a big deal, and he and his people deserve a lot of credit for that.
All right, switching gears. Remember when Black Friday was a thing? Well, for many retailers who are suffering from the pandemic, the big sales event cannot come soon enough. So many deals have already started, as I'm sure a lot of people have seen in their inboxes anyway. The biggest doorbusters of this year are going online only at staggered times. So this means fewer crowds in person, but way more competition for the best sales. Best Buy and Target are among the big box retailers whose sales are already live. Walmart starts Wednesday. Amazon is all week.
Yeah, you're not gonna. I mean, you're not. I think we've had this conversation in past years. You're not one of these like finish Thanksgiving dinner and go to Walmart to stand in line for TV people, are you?
No, I'm not. No.
No, me neither. But
I'm
um,
a watch the dog show,
yeah,
uh, lay around in my
turkey
sweatpants and drink
sandwich.
another glass of wine.
I always wonder. I'm like, I couldn't think of something I'd want to do less after eating Thanksgiving dinner than like bundling up and standing outside a store. But hey, look, everyone has their own traditions, right? I don't mean to knock you if you do that. But it does seem like, to your point, every company I've ever bought anything in my life is hyping their online sales this week. Look, we've talked about this before, Jill. If your name isn't Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Amazon, Lowe's, and you are a retailer, you've had a bad year. And when you think about it, the new surge in cases is really coming at the worst possible time for these guys, right? So I think it's just more, it's more important than ever to support small businesses this year. I, for one, am going to try and make a point of when I do my Christmas shopping to try and try and shop only from small businesses, either in Brooklyn or online. If you don't have to get it on Amazon or at Walmart, maybe don't do it this year. Like those guys don't need you, but the small businesses this year really do.
I totally agree, Carlo. I actually started some of my shopping and I did it. It's not a local business, but it's a small business online.
Yeah, that works.
So I feel good about myself.
What'd you get me?
What did you say?
What'd you get me?
Um, Carlo, you're not yet there, but you are on the list. So don't worry about it.
Fair.
Okay, before predictions, we just wanted to highlight a story in the Sunday New York Times that's going to make you feel good and hopeful because we've been talking about it, of course, these coronavirus vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer. Um, if and when these are approved, it's going to mark one of the most significant medical achievements in history, a brand new vaccine with high efficacy made from scratch in less than a year. So it would have been about 300 days, soup to nuts. Carlo, can you give us a little bit of the backstory here?
Yeah, I mean, look, this story. It was I read the story in the Sunday paper yesterday, and I was like, we got to highlight this on the podcast. I'm going to put it in the newsletter on Monday because it's just what you said. It just makes you feel good. It makes you feel hopeful about being a human being. The stories of how these companies and their public and private partners got here really comes down to this little bit of serendipity, right? You have this extremely infectious disease rampaging around the world, which, as bad as that is, it made it really easy for clinical trials, right? Because there's so many people sick. You have this new vaccine technology at the ready in messenger RNA, which I've been sort of talking about. I did a hit on Cheddar about it on Friday. Fascinating stuff. And to your point earlier about giving President Trump credit, you had a government in the Trump administration that was willing to spend money like crazy to eliminate, financial risk for these companies and knock down bureaucratic roadblocks. There's an anecdote in the story about how one of these companies, I think it was Moderna, had to get a big piece of machinery to their facility in the Northeast, and it was in the Midwest, and there were some sort of regulations about interstate travel with the pandemic, and they called up the Trump administration, and they were like, "We'll take care of it," and they got a police escort to drive this piece of machinery across the country for them. That's the kind of thing that we need more of, and for all the grief that I've given Trump these last couple of years and his administration, they do deserve credit on this. I have been calling this the Manhattan Project of our lives, and I don't want to jinx it, but it really is. So read the piece And just think about while you're reading it, imagine what we could do, Jill, if we treated other big problems the way that we've treated the coronavirus vaccine rush, climate change, income inequality, gun violence. Just put the smartest people in a room, lock them in a room with the latest technology, unlimited federal money, and no bureaucratic red tape. And this is what happens. It's so fascinating and hopeful to see. And it just shows you that it's really political will that keeps us from solving a lot of these big problems. And maybe we can learn something from this. Maybe one of the good things that can come from this sort of crappy year is a belief that, we can really solve big problems if we put our heads to it.
Hear, hear. All right, Carl, let's do some predictions for this week. Last week, I predicted 200,000 cases of COVID per day. I happily was not right. We're close, though. We hit 195,000 on Friday, and we are just inching closer and closer. I have seen some reports, depending on which group you're going with in terms of the numbers. I have seen some that we hit 200,000, but I will go with I will not give myself a point this week, Carlo, just to give you a chance to catch up to me.
Shut up.
This week, I'm going to go for a lighter one. I think that in terms of this holiday shopping season, I think it's going to be a blowout season. People are not spending a lot of money on things like vacations or basically anything else. And so I think that they're going to just really go all out on gifts for loved ones, maybe even buy gifts for people that they wouldn't necessarily normally buy gifts for. And the thing I keep hearing about, air fryers. Okay, maybe I'm just old and this is what my cohorts talk about. I think air fryers are going to be in the top of most gift lists. When you exclude kids' items and toys, I think air fryers are going to be, that's my prediction, that air fryers.
That's an appliance, right?
Yeah, I'm getting one from my mother-in-law. And then a friend of mine said that she has one and it's like the most amazing thing. I think it's going to be the hot gift this year.
All right, take it to the bank. I like it. All right, so my prediction last week, which you gave me a hard time for because I was immediately right, which was Moderna releasing its vaccine results and being really good.
I gave you a hard time because it was so painfully obvious that it was just like not a prediction. So
okay, fine.
It was basically just doing your job. But okay,
All
sorry.
Right. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm going to go a little bit harder this week. We're talking about cabinet predictions for the Biden administration. I say Pete Buttigieg for defense secretary and Bernie Sanders for labor secretary. Yeah.
Wow.
I think he's going to go.
Wow, good fix.
All right. See, I think Bernie for labor. I don't think a lot of people think that's going to happen, but I'm saying that Biden's going to do some outreach to the left with that pick. So I get half a point for each of those, but if I get both, I'm giving myself 2 points. And Jill, I'm going to give you half a point for the 200,000 cases because we did come very close and hit it, depending on what numbers you look at. So my calculations say that our 3-2 is the current score. So you're up by a point, but I'm coming, baby. I'm coming for you.
Anyway, you have a big opportunity this week to overtake me.
Oh yeah, I do.
And I think that the Bernie Sanders I've been hearing a lot about, but Pete Buttigieg for Secretary of Defense would be a really fascinating pick. I'm curious. I look forward to tomorrow to hearing some of these. Pete Buttigieg has been on Fox News religiously for Joe Biden for weeks. So perhaps you could be right.
We'll see.
All right, we're going to leave it there. That's what you need to know for Monday, November 23rd.
Bye, guys.